So, we're going to talk about something that isn't relationship based today.
Fascinating.
So, somebody wrote us in and asked, I have a question and I'm wondering if you can address it. Well, hang on, skip that. How do you know if you're running from something or if you need a change? I'm asking in the context of moving and changing jobs. I'm not sure if I'm moving and changing jobs because I'm avoiding something or if I truly am ready for a change. I'm passionate about my current job and I always thought it was my calling, but now I'm really feeling like I need a change. And I'm not sure if it's just the burnout speaking. What do you think?
You know, I think with so many of these things in life, what I always come back to is how much we are just so deeply either conditioned or wired. I'm not even necessarily clear at this point which it is, but to be afraid of making a mistake.
Mm,
And you know how I feel like I don't believe in mistakes. I think the idea that we can ever get it wrong is just something we are conditioned to believe so that we stay inside of boxes and stay within paradigms of like, this is what it means to live a good life and follow a path and do the right thing. And no such thing. I believe this is a life school. And so, say you leave the job and you go do something else or you move to a new city and you realize that actually isn't in alignment with what I really do want. That's information. Maybe it's the
mhm,
information you need. But I think when we're in that space of like, should I stay? Should I go forever? That's information too. Like, I think we're just so afraid to have the like constant seeking. I almost wanted to say like archetype within us.
mm,
I remember like I used to really shame myself because everyone around me was like, "Oh, you know, Danae, she's like constantly looking for her
mhm.
next career. She's like going to be a chef and then she's going to be a yoga teacher, like whatever the thing is." And I thought that meant there was something wrong with me. And there was nothing wrong with me. It was just me sort of sampling the raja of life while I was young and didn't have a lot of responsibilities and was able to do that, you know? But this idea that like you're getting it wrong if you feel like this isn't true for you right now and you wanna try something different, I think we gotta put that down a little bit, you know?
I love it. First of all, I want to say you wanted to be a chef.
I mean, for 2 seconds, when I became vegan, I was like, "Maybe I'll be a vegan chef," and I went to a, like, culinary class where they were like it was a knife class, and I was like, "That's enough.
I For those
I'm
of you who
done."
don't know, I don't know that I've ever seen Danae, like, really cook something, which is why I'm like, "You wanted to be a
Well, I
chef?"
can cook, actually, like, I used to do it all the time, like
You
Thanksgiving
just don't
dinner and
like it.
stuff, and then I decided that's a lot of time and energy that I don't wanna expend on anything, and I don't do things I don't enjoy, so no. I can cook, I choose not to cook, they are different.
I just found it fascinating that for a brief second you wanted to be a chef.
Yeah, that
Fascinating.
is pretty fascinating. I
Okay,
would like to
well,
date a
we
chef,
can, uh,
a
we can
vegan
unpack
chef
that.
who can cook for
No,
me.
no, no, no. Chefs, while amazing, I would love to have my tummy fed all the time. There is an archetype that goes along with somebody who's like an actual chef in the kitchen, and
Really?
it's an intense thing. And also, as they say, every Al-Anon is there. Well, no, wherever there's a coda, there's an Al-Anon, or whenever there's a coda, there's an addict. Is what the saying?
I would
Um,
like to go ahead and
they
invite all the
tend to
chefs
be
to write in and protest what
They
Vanessa's
can,
saying.
but I will do a sociological study that will show you that they tend to be more on the, like, compulsive addict side, and, I think you guys would maybe cancel each other out.
You
Just
guys
saying.
should write in and protest and leave us your phone number because what Vanessa is saying is
Because
just
Danae wants to
really
date you,
stereotyping chefs, and I don't think you guys should stand for it.
i.e. Danae would like you to write in so she can reach out to you to date
So
you.
give me your phone number and tell me what kind of cuisine you prefer to cook for the Okay, stop
This
being
is
silly.
somehow turned into a Danae dating episode.
Dating
Um,
profile? Okay. On
Dating
to
profile.
what was the question? I
What was the
forgot.
question? No, I going back, I do agree with you entirely. I mean, I think that I saw this come up all the time when I was working with adolescents, right? Where they would
Mm,
come in and God, the level of anxiety that these poor kids at like 14, 15, 16 were struggling with because it was like, I
mhm,
gotta have it all figured out. Like, oh my God, what am I gonna do? And
yeah,
listen, a lot of this was coming from their parents too, right? Which that made me just
mhm.
want to kind of slap them upside the head, but the parents, not the kids. But I used to just say to them, there was definitely one kid where I flat out was like, "Your mom's not gonna like that I'm saying this, but I'm gonna say it anyway.
Mm,
It doesn't fucking matter. I mean, I literally remember looking at this kid and saying that, "It doesn't matter." You know,
Yeah.
even if you are like young and you don't have a ton of responsibilities or you're not. I mean, I went back to school at 30 to change my entire life. I moved across the country with like 2 suitcases and nothing else, right? Um, and to your point, like there's no such thing as right or wrong. It's just like, can we get a little bit more comfortable with following what's going on in my gut? Like, whatever that intuitive calling is. And listen, I don't say that flippantly. I know that it's actually really hard for most of us to know what that inner calling is, what that gut is actually saying, because we have spent a lifetime, we are trained in our society to listen to everybody else but ourselves, right? To always put our knowing in external forces, whether those are people, whether that's stuff, whether that's booze, whether that's whatever, right? And so this is why at 40 plus years old, people come to me and they're like, I don't know who the fuck I am. I don't know what I want. I don't know if I want to be with this person. I don't know if this job is the right job. Because we are taught that it's not important to hone those skills of intuition and of knowing the self. And so
Yeah.
this, for this person at least, feels like a really good opportunity to do just that. Now, in saying that, I also want to say, you also don't have to just like pack your bags, put your 2-week notice in, and like buy an RV and drive across the country. Like there are ways to do this stuff that also don't feel so abrupt, especially depending on like what your financial situation is, like, you know, what your ability to do that is. You can do the breadcrumb approach that I tell so often to my clients, which is like, how about you just spend some energy and some time finding what brings you a sense of aliveness? And that could
Mm.
be cooking, right? Suddenly you're like, actually, I really like this. That could be, and so you take some classes. That could be yoga. That could be, I don't know, something online that you read about and you're like, oh, this topic fascinates me. And so now I'm going to buy a bunch of books around this topic and just fuel that part of myself that comes alive when I'm in the space of whatever that is, and allow that to be a little bit of like a seed that you're planting and then watering and cultivating of getting to know the self and see where that takes you. I think that is important and also maybe a little less dangerous for some people who feel like, well, I can't just like leave the job and go, you know, in this moment.
Yeah. I think this is why I'm so grateful for the background in depth psychology and understanding life in the context of the individuation process that
Hmm.
Carl Jung introduced, which is like Jung basically said the process of individuation doesn't even really start until you're like 32. So even as you're like, I started over at like 30, like,
Yep.
of course you did. And I
Yep.
think societally we need to normalize like, not only are there like different stages of adulthood and that is normal, but like they continue long beyond what our society and our sort of youth obsessed culture conditions us to believe. I
Hmm.
believe my 20s were like fucking around. Like I don't even like know what I did. They were sort of a wash, you know? Like yes, I had jobs, yes, I accumulated skills, but for the most part, I really didn't like have a relationship with my inner world, you know?
Mm.
That didn't start until my 30s. And
Yep.
so when I started to come into this relationship with my capital S self, I started to have a very different inquiry around like what do I want to fill my days doing? What kind of people do I want to surround myself with?
Hmm.
How do I know, right? And that's by design. And then I was just watching a like clip of Gwyneth Paltrow talking about how like at age 40 something happens and it's abrupt and all of a sudden it's like you get an upgrade in your psyche and then it happens again at 50, but like you come into these different levels of self, and I think we really normalize that with adolescence and like within children that there are developmental stages, but
Hmm.
then we sort of think that stops in
Totally.
adulthood, and it's just not the case. Like we are meant to continue to go through developmental stages at periods in our life, and what we prioritize and who we are and how we show up in the world is vastly different, and it's appropriate, you know.
Well, I love that, and also when you were saying that, I was thinking of how many people I've either heard of or have known, you know, family members and stuff who like this whole industrial way of being and living, which is so out of alignment with earth and self, has us
Mhm.
thinking that it's 62 to 65, depending on your industry. Like now we retire and now the rest of our lives are like spent doing nothing and playing golf. And it's like, I can't even fathom, first of all, because like you, I would definitely classify myself as a seeker. I always have been, but I can't fathom a time in my life where I can be like, "Oh, that's a wrap. Looks like I'm spending the next 20 years of my life doing nothing." And then how many people
Mm.
do I hear are miserable? Like they do that thing where they retire and they think, "Oh, this is great. Now I get to do nothing." And like in a year, they're climbing the walls with boredom and unfulfillment and disillusionment because like you said, every decade is an opportunity for us to grow and evolve and learn more about ourselves. And so I think we do a disservice just even in the way we normalize that in society and kind of push elders to the fringe. You know, it's indicative of how we view uh, being wise and how we view knowledge and experience. The way that we like shut our elders out, out and up. Um, even in, like, nursing homes and stuff, you know? I don't know, that was, like, a whole other tangent, but that's what it reminded me of when you were saying this, like, process of unfolding that happens as we age.
Yeah, I think that's such a I mean, it is a little bit of a different conversation, but I think it's worthwhile to state that this thing of like life happens in this early stage of
Mhm.
life and that later in life we are no longer of use to society and we should just sort of like settle down somewhere and accept the fact that we're done. I think it in a lot of ways leads to a lot of like mental health struggles.
Totally.
Like if we are in the belief system of what the collective paradigm might be, there is a lot of pain and struggle and suffering that comes from I'm on this one way train. There's nothing I can do about it. And everything about this society is telling me that I am about to be what's the word I'm looking for?
Annihilated? Um,
Unnecessary, like
made
I can't
obsolete?
find the word. Obsolete, yes. And
Yeah.
so, like, shout out to Chip Conley and Modern Elder Academy because I think I went there and did a course last year and just was such a like beautiful experience of why it is so important for us to like reclaim this idea that our lives are anything other than like beginning in our like elder years, whatever that means, because it's just such a like we're doing such a disservice not only to ourselves when we stand in that space and for women a lot of that is by design because like
Mhm.
it's completely negating the wisdom of the crone and the woman who has lived some life and is able to stand in the space of her embodied self unapologetically. That is by design in conjunction with the oppression of
Mhm.
women, for the record. And I think like reclaiming, like, I'm 44 and like when I like talk about my age and people are like, you're just so open about it. I'm like, "Fuck yeah, I'm like the best I've
Not
ever been. Are you
ashamed,
kidding
yeah.
me? Like I'm obsessed with myself at 44. And I think it like I just keep getting better. So like this idea that like somehow we are meant to like slither away as we get older, like I just think that's like such a played out paradigm and
Mhm.
that we should always be growing, we should always be evolving, we should always be learning new tricks and frankly reinventing ourselves
Mhm.
and that it's never too late to say like what next.
I love that. Yeah, I think it's this like we get out into the air quote real world and it's like you somehow have to like get serious and like stop playing and stop finding
Mm,
wonder and joy in the small things and all that becomes like frivolous in a capitalistic society, and it strips us of aliveness, it strips us of life, it strips us of all of it, right? The experience of being alive. And so then we become so obsessed with this right or wrong or path or money or like what can I do or and so that's why I use that like that breadcrumb analogy because I just so often say like how about if we just focus on the feeling of aliveness? How about if we just start
mm.
there, you know? And can that be enough? And can we not rush that process? Can we just be present to it? And listen, I'm not saying I was perfect in it because I did that process too. And even when I was in the midst of like, oh, this is what feels good right now. This is what feels alive right now. I was still like, and what? And what's next? Come on, keep going. And I
Mm.
had to really contend with that. Partly I was in the energy of New York, which I think just carries a little bit more of that energetic, kind of go, 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 and that was maybe part of me wanting and desiring to move away from that. Because I just kind of felt like it wasn't healthy for me. It wasn't giving me the space to just be. But I also think it's a practice of cultivating that within yourself. So I guess all that to say, instead of saying, what's the next thing? What's the next career? What's the next relationship? What's the next this and that? How about if we just say right here and now, like what we're going to focus on is what brings me joy and what makes me feel alive. And I'm going to like lose myself in that, and see where it takes me. It's like being in a river and like you're clinging onto the side of the river and you're just let go and let yourself float. And that's
Mm,
beautiful. Can it be beautiful? Can we allow that?
yeah.
Mm,
I think that's like become a question that I come back to check in with myself with where I am in terms of alignment with how I want to be showing up for this life. When I ask myself the question, am I having fun? And
mm,
if I'm not having fun, or if I'm judging myself for even asking the question about having fun, I know I've sort of put my wounded masculine armor back on and I'm like
love it.
muscling through from like a patriarchal way of like what life should be. But it's like when I give myself permission, because you and I've talked about this, like the word play is even still hard for me, like, I struggle with it.
Same,
I'm like, "I don't wanna play."
same.
But I allow myself to, like, be in, like, "But is this fun?" And if I'm not
Mm,
having fun, what would I need to give myself permission to have fun? And that becomes, like, the reclaiming of my feminine energy for me, and that's, like, a way that I check in. Like, if I'm not having fun with whatever this is, that usually is a really good indication for me, like, I don't wanna engage in this anymore, and I give myself permission to hold that.
mm. Give yourself permission, y'all. That's where it starts.